Welcome, everybody, to All-Star Insights, sponsored by Kids on First Foundation and Tuckahoe Sports. I'm your co-host, Chris McKnight, along with my co-host, Coach Rock. What's up, Coach?
How you doing, guys? Welcome to the show.
And today we have a very special guest with us, Brandon Puffer, a former Major League Baseball player, author, a book that we'll talk about a little bit here, Brandon, and also a youth coach now, has got his own program and doing a lot of great things down in Texas with that. So welcome to the show, Brandon.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, no, we've been looking forward to this for a couple of weeks. I know we were going back and forth, and I'm glad we finally got you set up and hooked up with us. So as we do with all the shows, we start off just because it's important for our listeners to understand the background and how you started in the game and what got you, really interested in playing baseball.
Yeah, no, absolutely. For as long as I can remember, sports in general, but baseball was a big part of our life and my family. I grew up in Mission Viejo, California, so Orange County. Very blessed, very fortunate to grow up in that area. Had a little brother. My dad would coach our little league teams. My mom would serve on the board. And we just spent so many great moments and have so many great memories of North Mission Viejo Little League, down at the lake fields across the street from the lake. Type of deal, probably like when you guys grew up, where I had a weeknight game, maybe a Saturday game at some point, and they had to come find us to get us on the field for our game because we were all just running around playing over the line, throwing the football, just seeing classmates, and just really cool community moments. It's definitely a little different. I know, Coach Rock, you mentioned you're in that travel ball space, as am I, and so a little different. We're on the road all the time, a lot of different players and teammates. So yeah, I just have fond memories, man, being a young boy playing Little League Baseball. My brother's around somewhere and my parents are down at the fields and we're just there all day long serving and playing a game in between. So that's the kind of fostered my love for the game originally, is doing that with my dad coaching us, and then kind of, seeing that maybe there was some skill involved there, and I wanted to take it a little more serious as I got older and closer to high school.
Yeah. And so what going from Little League, like seeing up into 12, 13, then middle school, high school. So did you know, like, going into high school, one of your goals was eventually, like all kids, want to play in the big leagues?
I did. I knew very, very early. My parents, I wrote a note to them, and as a coach and a mentor now, this is not my theory or my advice anymore, but they were on me to do my homework. And I was like, I don't need to do my homework. I'm going to be a big league baseball player. And little guy, and they're like, yeah, that's great, but have a backup plan. And I wrote him a note that said, I, Brandon Puffer, do not need to do my homework because I will be a Major League Baseball player, and signed it and gave it to him. And they're like, okay, this is sweet, but they still have it. So it was pretty cool just to have that mindset. But yeah, I guess as I grew pretty fast. I was kind of that 12-year-old kid that shot up real fast and threw pretty hard and things like that. So it looked like, I was having some success, and I didn't really know what that looked like. It was so different with no social media and rankings. And so not until probably like my sophomore year, when a couple scouts started having some conversations with my coach and my dad and me, that I realized, maybe this is realistic. If I work hard and some things go my way, I might be able to have a chance to make a run at this. So probably about sophomore year in high school is when it became pretty real for me.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And while you were in high school, what were some non-negotiable practices or principles that you basically took in to set yourself apart as an elitist?
Yeah, good question, Coach Rock. I mean, I think it was just, and again, growing up in an area where the beach wasn't too far away, I definitely saw a lot of teammates go, you know what? I could go to practice, I could go to early work, go to the weight room, or I could go to the beach because it's a really nice day. And so just having to have the discipline to really pour into not just your mandatory high school practices, but the extra work and the trainers. And my parents gave me some great opportunities. It was a little different again, with the training and all that. But if I wanted to get better, or even if it was just me and my dad and my brother going to the park to get extra reps, it was non-negotiable is if you're going to make it, this is what it takes. And I had, my mom was a triathlete. We knew what discipline was. She'd wake my brother and I up at 3 a.m. and put us in the back of the car so she could go swim before work. And so we saw that it was modeled for us. And so certainly the hard work, the going the extra mile, doing what others aren't willing to do so you can have what others won't have. But also along the way, I picked up some core habits, off the field with trying to figure out my identity and trying to kind of fill that God-shaped hole inside of me that baseball and performance and all those things just weren't doing. So while I did know the non-negotiables, I did know what hard work was, and for the most part, put it in. I also made some choices that weren't beneficial towards the goal that I was trying to attain and being a big league ball player. So I think that was my biggest battle, is the battle between what you're supposed to do and what you need to do, but are you going to make those choices all the time? And so that would play out my story, as you guys know, all the way through.
Yeah, and that's a great point, because I think kids today, there's so much going on in their lives. They're pulled in a lot of different directions. Like stuff when we grew up, honestly, we didn't have cell phones like you said. Our parents, we go out, be out at the field, and they'd say, "Come in when the street lights come on." They really didn't know where we were, what we were doing. They just said, to come in, when the street lights came on. So I think today, that because there is so much social media, there's so much going on in a kid's life, that someone that is really dedicated and can put the right foot forward is really important. They say they talk about the grind. I don't know if it's a grind if you're doing something that you love, but it is, like you said, it is the dedication and the hard work, even to be a successful high school athlete now, or in travel ball, to be successful there. So that's really something that I think parents and kids need to understand, that it's not, the grind is not 2 days a week practice, maybe going to the weight room once a week. It's doing things like you said, sacrificing, maybe going to the beach when all your friends are going to the beach, that no, you're going to the cages or you're hitting the weight room. That becomes what, gets you to that next level.
Agreed. Yeah, and it's kind of like, to your point, it's consistency. I think anybody can make a nice little run. Motivation gets you, a couple weeks in, or January right now, New Year's resolution. Man, I'm motivated, but it's when you don't want to do it, it's consistently doing it. And I think those are the guys, the separators, is consistently putting that work in, and not just in little spurts when you're feeling motivated.
Yeah, 100%. So let's talk about a little bit for high school now, making that next jump after high school.
Yeah, sure. So, as I mentioned, sophomore year of high school, things were looking pretty good for me. Some scouts were coming around. I was having a little bit of success, but there was adversity as well, not only from my own choices, but also just, human nature, things that happen. I injured my shoulder. I had surgery sophomore year, which was pretty early. So you kind of, that first, oh my goodness, am I ever going to come back from this? What does this look like? And the rehab, and ultimately, good lessons are always involved in that pain and adversity, but it's not so fun going through it, especially at a young age. And then also, as I mentioned before, I had picked up some bad habits, and I got in trouble at a high school dance, and actually got suspended from baseball my junior year. So it was like this, here it is, you God's giving you the ability. You do have a work ethic when you want to apply that, but there's a lot of fights going on internally as well, or to the point about the injury, there were some adversities there. So after coming back from all that, I had a healthy senior year, which was a huge blessing. And right after that, in June, I got drafted by the Minnesota Twins out of high school in 1994, kind of old. And that was just the first time where I'm like, man, okay, so this is it. I got drafted. I'm going to rookie ball with the Minnesota Twins, leaving California, flying out to Florida. Not mature or ready for that, but super excited to, start my journey as a professional ball player. So that's where it kind of all started. Got drafted out of high school, signed with the Twins, and then just went on this long journey that would go up and down and all over the place for 15 years.
Hey, good point. Hey, I wanted to talk real quick about the fact that we have to be able to determine the trouble we meet determines the trouble we keep. And that can go vice versa as well. The trouble you keep determines the trouble you meet, right? And so I was one of those guys that, my career basically was also ended on basically affiliations and things of that nature, and making the wrong choices. And appreciate Virginia State University for taking me on and saving my life through that process. I tell you that, a kid coming out of Denver, Colorado, you know what I mean? So at the end of the day, how do you express to kids that go through that adversity, that go through those bad choices, how to bounce back and really give themselves a second chance if the world doesn't want to give you a second chance?
Oh man, I love that question, Coach Rock. That's right up my alley. I'm a big second chance guy because as I already alluded to, I was kind of a knucklehead growing up and man, still learning lessons. I really being a big league ball player and all the things that came along with that gave me a good platform, right, to coach and maybe get a little credibility from these young men. But I really feel like they lean in when I'm vulnerable about, my mistakes, my mistake, not just big public ones that I'm sure we'll get to that led to real serious consequences, but my mistakes when I was young and going, hey guys, like it's up to you. Like your choices are going to determine your consequences and your destiny. And at the end of the day, you can learn from someone like me who's willing to go, look, I went down that road. This is where it ends. It's not going to change. You're not going to be the first one to kind of outdo this thing. And my dad would tell me all the time. I watched him get sober when he was in high school. My mom, strong woman of faith. I watched my dad give his life to the Lord in high school, and just watching his actions is what really changed things around for me, or at least planted that seed for later. And he would tell me things like, son, that this drinking and this going out, these altercations and all the stuff you're doing, it only leads to one of two places, and that's really death or prison. It just didn't, it didn't sink in at the time. So I really try to hammer that point home with the young men I'm mentoring, going, hey guys, I've been down that road. It is not pretty. Some of you guys are going to have to make your own choices, and we all will. But at the end of the day, you can learn a cheap lesson if you're willing to really look at guys like me and guys who are willing to share what that looks like on the glamorous side of I call it, the sin or the poor choices or whatever it is. So just really leaning into that and being vulnerable with them, just going, guys, look, I don't have it all together now, but I sure didn't back then. And I think guys appreciate that when they don't feel like I'm looking down on them or judging them as something I've never been through. It's like, no, I've been there, man. And that's why I'm trying to help you get through this and make some better choices for your future.
Thank you for
Yeah,
that. Appreciate that.
yeah, that's really important. I think, back in the day, it was, coach said do this and you did it. Yes sir, no sir, and there was really no give and take. And I think it was more transactional. This is what I need you to do, and do it. And nowadays, I feel that the connection with the kids, and if you're going to be a good coach, you need to have that connection with players. No matter how you go about that connection, but you need to have that, because if they're going to listen and they're going to follow you and run through a wall, if they don't have that connection, that okay, you can be the best X's and O's guys, but they're not going to take that information and use it if they're not connected to you. That's really important. And like you said, baseball is a game that is going to humble you, a lot. And if they learn how to bounce back, in life off of those situations like you were talking about, and be able to do that in a game, that's going to help them not just be a better player, but a better person going through. So when you got drafted, because a lot of people, that's a great honor in itself, just getting drafted, number one. But then, as a young kid flying out and living basically on your own and, making those decisions, how did that go that first year for you?
About like you would expect. From a young knucklehead from Southern California with some addiction issues and all these different things. The maturity level certainly was not there. And then you show up. I mean, literally, guys, I graduated high school. I remember talking to the scout. I signed. I said, hey, I've got to go to my graduation. They're like, well, rookie ball season starts pretty soon. And I said, okay, well, I got to do that, right? I get to do that, right? Go to my graduation. Yes, sure. And I asked about a senior trip with my buddies, and they're like, no, that's not happening. So literally the day after graduation, I flew out. And the funny story is I dressed in a shirt and tie, really tried to make that great impression. I showed up in Fort Myers, Florida. My flight had been delayed. It was 2 a.m. and no one was there to get me. We didn't have cell phones. And it was like, oh man, this is not as glamorous as I had expected. And so eventually, through payphones and all at the hotel, we got a shuttle to come get me. And it was a pretty humbling reality immediately. And so, yeah, and then there I was with a bunch of guys that were carrying the same thing I was. They had a little bit of pride because we kind of thought we were cool. We got drafted out of high school, right? And you're the big athlete or whatever the case may be. Broke on our own, just trying to figure it out. And so tons of great camaraderie. And I'm still in contact after 15 years and 12 organizations. I still talk to a few guys from that first rookie ball team because we were all just latching onto each other, trying to figure it out. And so the baseball stuff, that's what we knew, right? We go to the field and man, mess around the clubhouse and go do our thing on the field. That's great. But now when you have, in some cases, we played in the morning during the day, and you have 8 to 10 hours of downtime, and you don't know what to do with that, and you have too much freedom, or at least more freedom than you've had in the past. It just really made the poor choices off the field, suffered some consequences, things of that nature. And that would be kind of a parallel for my career until I really learned some hard lessons. For me, it was surrendering my life to Christ at one point. But yeah, man, the field stuff was good. We know how to do that, but it was navigating the life choices and the things off the field. And I'll tell you, some guys did a really good job, but it's a hard deal. And you look up to maybe a little bit as an athlete, not in the way of feel bad for us, because it's a huge honor, but it is. I mean, you're trying to make good choices and the world's kind of at your fingertips. And for me, I wasn't ready. And so I think the enemy had a field day with that, and we learned some tough lessons along the way.
Yeah. And,
Amen.
one of the things I think, Major League Baseball within the last couple of years has done a better job, the rookie mentorship program. And, it's still probably not as much for the minor league guys when they first get in, because it is a big adjustment. And like you said, I don't think it's the adjustment of playing. The game's a little fast, but the game's the same. But just the free time and really have time management skills to really get you on the path, to the next level. And again, it's changed a lot too. Now they're paying for housing. There's better on the road and off the real road pay for meals, so you can actually eat something nutritious. I know when I coached, independent, we had $25 a day. These guys were 6'3", 225 pounds, and they got $25 for the day to eat something healthy. That's not happening,
I know.
So
I know.
I think they are doing a better job, but you're right. There's a lot of things that in time management skills that they probably drop the ball with, and a lot of players do too, even in college. But now, at least in college, the right route for a lot of guys is now, because there's only 20 rounds, going to college, probably getting some better coaching, overall, and better nutrition, and, just guys kind of keeping a watchful eye on them as an 18-year-old kid. I used to tell my players in college, there's not a lot of difference between an 18-year-old's brain and a 12-year-old's brain. They're they're kids. They're still kids, and you have to, even though you want to treat them like men, there are still some things that you have to. Guys are like, why do you still do room checks and curfew? But because we're in Florida, and I need to know. Like at 8, I'm responsible for all these dudes, and they're 18. I remember when I was 18. Yeah. You do stupid things. So
Hey,
that's a really good point. The time management stuff, really good.
real quick, Brandon, piggyback on what Coach Chris was talking about in reference to that. I was mentioning to them about, the MLB or any high level type of baseball needs to incorporate a case management system for some of these kids. A team for there to be one guy to be completely solely responsible for. And I felt like there should be ratios of not necessarily babysitters per se, but they need some real professionals that could be there with them to help them mentally, financially, to help them understand those time management and those life skills on a day-to-day basis, man. So I really feel like that would help out tremendously. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I agree 100%. And to Chris's point, I do think, and we've had kids come out of our program and take off into the minor league system and things. I do think they've come a long way just with housing and with a little bit more support. And I think each organization has at least one mental performance coach, things of that nature. And then I think they can give you all the tools, which I think they should, and continue to beef all that up is wonderful. And then it also comes down to the player, though, or any human being. You got to want the help. You've got to be willing to tap into that. And I think the feeling for me was all the way up until my life hit rock bottom was, you kind of don't want to show any mental weakness. So I wanted to be known as the guy they could count on, who's tough and unflappable, and you could put me in any situation. And I would show up. So off the field, I felt like admitting that I was, to be, I guess it's not weak minded, but in my mind, it felt weak minded to go, I'm struggling with this, and I'm not handling my free time very well, and I've got some issues from the past that I'm numbing, and like all these things that I would learn later what I needed to address. I would just stuff those down, maybe just as a man, but also as an athlete, not wanting to show the organization that I have weakness. So I always share, yes, they've got some great resources now, but I would recommend and encourage players to not be afraid to be verbal and vocal about, hey, I'm struggling in these areas. I need some help. And I think, especially now, any organization would be willing to try to provide that if we're willing to open our mouth and say, hey, I'm struggling. And that gives other guys a permission to say, man, I struggle in that area too, rather than feeling like I'm the only one. I got to kind of bottle this up and just kind of man up on it. Right.
Yeah, no, and that's true. I tell people all the time, one of the best decisions I ever made as a head coach, and honestly, I wish I would have did it earlier, but I just, it wasn't as big as it is today. I hired a sports psychologist for my college team, and man, I could tell you the difference that it made. Initially, I was like, it's probably a cool thing, and a big league teams are doing it, so let's give it a shot. But what a difference it made. And I had players when we were doing the exit interviews tell me that, because that, like you said, Brandon, they can't come to me and say, hey, you know what, coach, when I take the mound, I'm a little nervous, because in the back of my mind I'm saying, dude, you ain't taking the mound anymore.
Yeah.
If you're nervous. And they were able to go to her and talk through those things and get a plan to try to help combat those issues without, like you said, maybe breaking down and telling the coach, and then what are the consequences. So I think that is really, really important. That goes back to your earlier statement about having that connection with the players, no matter what age. Everybody that we meet is going through something, and we don't know that, in what's going on in their mind. But those 2 hours of practice might be the best 2 hours of their day, and that one word of encouragement, or that one word that or just even walking up to them and saying, hey, how's your day going, pal? That one little interaction, you know is really important. And again, as a young coach, I thought it was all about just winning to get to that next level, get to the playoffs, and get to the championships. But as I got older, you start realizing that it's not. And if you create those relationships with your players, and even if it's a touch point, in college, it's really hard because you have 36 players and you're trying to touch each one of them. But even walking around doing, stretching, or like now when I coach travel, it's a lot easier because I only have, 13 guys. So you walk around just to make sure you have a touch point with each player. It becomes, I think, like you said, it's really important to create that relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. You know the old saying, nobody really cares what you know until they know that you care. And so, yeah, investing in those players. I think even as an old school guy myself, especially early on, it was kind of like, I love to have fun. I love to joke around, but also I don't care if you like me. I'm here to make you better. And so, yes, accountability for sure. But at the same time, there better be an equal amount of pats on the back and, hey, I love you, man. And how's your family? And I really care about you other than your performance for me. So to your point earlier, transformational over transactional.
Yes, definitely, definitely. So we're in the minor league system now, and let's talk about the opportunity to come during the minor leagues and getting that call up, to the big leagues.
Yeah, that was a long journey and a really fun one. So yeah, I mean, just early on, show up Minnesota Twins, rookie ball, 18 years old in spring training. And I'll never forget looking at the roster sheets in the locker room every morning, kind of you check into the board, who's going where, here's the sheet, whatever, and seeing, 50 guys on every roster. And from big leagues to triple A to double A to high A to single A to rookie ball. And I'm in rookie ball on a roster that has too many guys, and they're still going to trickle down the other ones. And that mental game of just, man, what are we doing here? Decided pretty early that and I know it's cliche, but it is for a reason, that I'm only going to focus on things I can control. I'm not looking at these rosters anymore. I'm going to go out, give everything I have every single day, every drill, everything, and let the chips fall where they may. And that really helped because a lot of guys, mentally get tied up in the numbers and their stats and things that, really just let's focus on the process and not that outcome. So early on, I did take that as my, kind of one thing I told myself was, hey, quit looking at those things. That's just going to frustrate you. So, but looking at it was a real check. If you really want to do this, man, this is going to be to your, to your point of grind. You might love it, but it's going to be hard. And so it was. I got released pretty early on by the Twins, mostly just off the field, just kind of average, on the field and not great off the field. So why would you keep me around, really? And then signed on with the Angels, kind of went down the same path, doing okay on the field, not managing my time very well. Same thing with the Reds. So I'm about 3 or 4 organizations in, 5 seasons in at this point, and I've been released or fired 3 times and going, man, I'm not going to quit till everybody rips this uniform off me, but it's not looking, I'm not fast tracking. That's for sure. And I was in A-ball 1998 with the Reds. I had a bad outing. My numbers were just okay. By the way, I had a son right out of high school. So it's like, had a dependent, had family help me raise him, had full custody of him. Just like, hey, man, you either got to make this thing work, put everything you have into it, but we'll help and support you. But at the end of the day, you're on thin ice here, which I was with my career. And so this is where I think just being able to adapt and being, kind of coachable and malleable helps is I had a coach that I had a great relationship with, a pitching coach, came out to me in batting practice, and he was kind of a journeyman, which I was turning into, and he was a sidearm pitcher. And I was flipping balls in from the side because my arm hurt. I was just traditional over the top guy, and it was average stuff, and my arm was hurting. And so I was flipping it in there. Andre Rabone, my pitching coach, kind of hobbled out there on his prosthetic hip. He was awesome. And he said, hey, man, Puff, you ever think about pitching like that, sidearm? And I said, no, Jay, and my arm hurts. I'm just trying to flip it into the bucket. And he had shared with me that the Reds were pretty close to letting me go that week. They let a buddy of mine go, and it was me or him. And so it's like, look, man, you're 25, you're on your 3rd team, you're not going anywhere quickly. And I said, sure, I'll try anything if you recommend it. We threw one little bullpen on the side, and he just said, look, from here on out, you're a sidearm pitcher. So I kind of learned that on the fly in the minor leagues. And it was a great lesson for me. Had I said, oh, no, this is what got me here, I would have been done in a year. But because I dropped my arm angle and coincidentally around the same time, I'd given my life to the Lord. It was my first run at sobriety. I had about 5 years sober during that time. So I was working hard. I was prepared. My career really took off, man. I went from about to be released in single A to double A by the end of that season. The next 2 years, that's 1998, I went 99, 2000, 2001, just kind of fast tracking. At this point, I had been picked up by the Houston Astros. And in April went to my first big league camp. That was awesome. Had a good camp. Got to rub elbows with the guys that are doing it. And then it fired me up, and I just got that taste of it and I wanted it. And so April 17th, 2003, the Houston Astros called me up to make my debut in Cincinnati. And so just a long road. I think it was about 8 years into my minor league career, 4 or 5 organizations, change of arm angle, just a cool moment for me and my family of that childhood dream, but also, not handed to you. To your point, they only do 20 rounds now. I was a 27th rounder, so it wouldn't have been drafted. And just to be able to kind of scratch and claw and be blessed enough to have that opportunity was awesome, man. So that was my first go at that first cup of coffee with the Astros in 2002.
Yeah, and I'm sure, like you said, because of the hard work and the perseverance, it makes it even more. And again, it's special for any time, but when you put that time and effort in, for that ultimate goal, and I don't think people realize too, 20 something thousand players in the whole world to this day, since baseball started, that ever have that opportunity to say they were, a Major League Baseball player. So that is a huge, a huge accomplishment for someone, at any level, but especially somebody who's put that time in the minors to get that opportunity.
Yeah, it was
I wanted,
amazing.
wanted I wanted to chime in on that as well, man, because at the end of the day, these kids, man, they have this primary position mentality. Like, I'm a shortstop. These guys don't understand. You got guys from the San Diego Padres. The whole entire team were shortstops. I mean, the entire team grew up being shortstops, and then they were able to be positioned. And based on what you said on the fly and thinking outside of the box as far as that arm angle and things of that nature that you had to adjust to, what do you say to those parents and those players out there to say, listen, although you may have a primary position, you show up that day when it's time for showcase baseball or a camp. Those scouts might put you in the outfield and you might be an infielder. Who knows? Depending on how they see you or how they're evaluating you, are you able to make that adjustment right then and there on the fly, or are you going to crack? What do you say to those parents and to those players of making that adjustment?
Yeah, Coach Rock, I can tell you have experience in this realm because you're speaking the same language we talk to our parents, and it involves shortstops quite often, and of course other things. But no, I'm so fortunate with our program that we have other guys with a lot of experience in player development, agents. They played in the big leagues, and it doesn't mean we know it all by any means, but we've seen some baseball. We've have some examples of things that we just mentioned, right? Not only with myself at the arm angle, but players that came through our program as a catcher, but they had a strong arm, and we put them on the bump, and now they're in professional baseball. And I've had several times where I'm like, man, you're very athletic. Not that you can't be a shortstop, but you might kind of project to be a center fielder, an outfielder. At least you need to have that. And I've had several parents say, well, we're just going to leave. He's a shortstop, whatever the case. And then you look up in 4 years and they're playing left field in college, and you're like, that's it, man. Like I didn't think you weren't good. I just wanted to help you of what we saw. We're not always right, but this is what we saw. And so just using examples, in my case, Chopping the Angle, or, other kids that have come through the program. I think the more examples you get, the more you can earn that trust to go, look, a guy's come through. But at the end of the day, parent, most of the time, sometimes player needs to be willing to accept that. And I think it's a pride thing, right? Like, we all want to be the shortstop or whatever the case may be. I was drafted as a starting pitcher. I was in the bullpen pretty much all 15 years of my career. I loved it. But originally, it was like, I don't want to be a bullpen guy. And it was like, well, if that's your best opportunity to continue to move up the ladder and also to be a great teammate, this is what the coach is saying might be better for the team and you individually for your future. I strongly recommend, Coach Rock, that people are willing to look at that. And I understand the mentality of like, I'm not going to let a coach tell me I can't do this, and I'm really going to knuckle down. But also the pride and the belief in yourself is wonderful. But some guys that have been down the road might see something that you're not seeing right now, and they're just trying to prepare you for a future. So I would certainly, encourage, and we do encourage in our program, to be willing to do that. Because, like you said, man, once you get to, for me, it was 18 years old out of high school, go to rookie ball, and I'm like, oh, everybody's really good. Everybody, it's not just the States, it's different countries. And so, these high school kids going off to college saying, I was the man there in high school. No one cares. Like, it's time to own where you are now. And that might mean flexing a little bit and being malleable enough to move around a little bit. So I love that. I think it's a great point. It's huge for not just sports, but in life, right? Adaptability. I've had to go through some things where I was holding on to this for the program, and it has to be this way. And it's like, as soon as I let it go, God was like, we had all this other stuff for you. You just weren't willing to let it go. So I think it's a great great lesson for on and off the field or court.
Yep. So
Thank you. Appreciate
let's
it.
talk about some of the, now after you're starting your big league debut, let's talk about the career path, moving to the next team and some of the good things that you and some of the obstacles that you ran into.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I love to tell the story about my big league debut because it has a unique, a unique part to it with a manager that I had at the time. And so, yeah, I got that call. We were in New Orleans, showed up in Cincinnati the next day. The Houston Astros were on the road in Cincinnati. Walked into that locker room, man, and just saw the jerseys up, the Bagwells and Bigios and Berkmans and Wagner, and there's Puffer, right? And so, man, imposter syndrome sets in pretty quick. I don't belong here. Look at all these guys, which is one of the obstacles you need to, overcome is like, hey, man, you got to at least fake it till you make it and pretend like you belong. So I got over that a little bit and got down into the bullpen, started getting to work. And just the first night or two, I got to just kind of take it in, and it was awesome. I'm a huge fan. And then third night, the bullpen phone rings, and it's like, it's time to work. Puffer's got the ninth inning. That heart started pounding, and we were up 7-2. Yeah, 7-2. And I went in for the ninth inning, and I struck out the first guy, Todd Walker out of LSU. I loved watching him the College World Series. Great feeling. I was like, oh, man, this is easy. I got this. And I'll back up a second. Jimmy Williams was our veteran manager. Rest in peace. He's passed away. He had a meeting in spring training, and I'll never forget it. He said, look, guys, if I come out to the mound, I'm not coming out to talk to you. I'm taking the baseball. We'll send Bert Hooten, the pitching coach, if we're going to talk to you. You want to avoid any of that confrontation you see where guys are like, I mean, look, if I was Scherzer, I could say get off my mound, but I wasn't. So it was like, strike out Todd Walker, get another out. Man, this is easy money. We're going to be celebrating here in a second. And then I hit a guy in the back. Guy hits a double. It's first and third. So they're just like a bloop and a blast away from getting back in the game. And I hear the bullpen getting loose. It's Billy Wagner, our Hall of Fame closer. And he just boom, boom, boom. And man, here comes Jimmy Williams. I'm like, oh, crap. My big league debut. I'm out of the game. And he walks up to me and I go to hand him the ball because I remembered his speech in spring training. And he said, "Wait a minute, Puff. Wait a minute." He goes, "This is your major league debut, right?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "All the guys are at the mound." He said, "You got any family in town? You got some calls to make?" And I said, "Well, a couple people flew in last minute, my parents, but yeah, I'll be making some calls." And he goes, "All right, well, are you going to take them out to dinner or are we going to do after?" And I go, "Yeah, man, they're probably hungry. I'll probably do a few things in the clubhouse." He goes, and he looks at me and he goes, "Well, Puff, I'm hungry. I'm sure your family's hungry. So get this last out so we can get out of here." And I was like, what a cool, he knew what I was going through as a rookie, man. And that heart was pounding. I was just like, now I was just, I'm still in the game. And so I was able to strike the next guy out and celebrate with my teammates. And it was just a wonderful memory for a debut. And man, when they called me up, yeah, it was awesome. When they called me up, I was supposed to be there 7 days to rest the bullpen. Couple things went in my favor and I was pitching okay. And they kept me up the rest of the season. So it was awesome, man. Like my first home outing, when we went back to Houston, we faced the Giants. Got a guy out. We intentionally walked Barry Bonds because, of course, we did. Next guy hits a ground ball, fielder's choice. So Barry's on second. I'll never forget. We're talking about obstacles. That's where I'm going here. Of just that mental game of like, you're here now, you belong, get over. So, but I'm checking the base runner at second, and Barry's getting a secondary, and I'm like, that's Barry Bonds. That's Barry Bonds right there. And I'm trying to get whoever out, Jeff Aurelio, whoever it is. I don't know if that's him, but so at the end of the day, man, the biggest thing was just kind of, okay, act like you belong here. I don't think I ever got really that comfortable and was myself, because it was always like, okay, good outing, but let's get to the next one, or, but whatever the case may be. I'm a rookie, kind of a big personality at times. I was real like, not that I don't think I should come in and just be loud at first. I am old school, but it was also like, be comfortable enough to like chat up your teammates and act like you belong there. And so that was hard for me, but yeah, I got that time at the Astros in 02 and 03. Just a little side note off the field, I'm sober, have a family, I'm married, I'm taking care of my business, and all that's helping. And then in 2004, Astros 02, 03, 04, big leagues with the Padres. I'm close to where I grew up. But at that same time in spring training, I had let alcohol back in my life. I had a really tough adversity in my life. I separated from my wife. I had 5 years sobriety. I was a Christian. I thought I had it. Oh, I didn't know about backsliding. People don't do that, right? And sure enough, when that adversity hit my life, I found out I wasn't as surrendered as I thought I was. And I allowed those habits back in my life. And I would take a real slippery slope back down the road. And what that would look like is a lot of bad choices off the field, but also not as prepared. Preparation breeds confidence. So I'm out there facing big league hitters. I'm not confident because I've been out the night, whatever the case may be. And so 04 from the Padres, a little bit of big league time, not really performing great, got traded to the Red Sox. Went to AAA for a little bit, got called up to Boston in September. It happened to be 04 when they won the big one. So, again, a World Series win with the Red Sox. 05, I'm up with the Giants for a little while. But again, the spiral's happening off the field. And so the big league time was great. I don't think I enjoyed it as much as I could have because of the mental battle of, man, am I going to mess it up? Do I belong here? This is what you've always wanted. I just let that mental battle eat me up a little bit, rather than just going and trusting my abilities and doing all the things that we all coach others to do now. So, but again, it was a great learning tool for me as a coach and mentor now to go, if I'm honest with you guys, and I wouldn't have told you this during my career, I was a little intimidated. I pitch different in the big leagues. In AAA, I'm attacking everybody. I'm a bulldog. I get up to the big leagues, I'm nibbling, trying to make that perfect pitch. They don't chase. I'm down in the counts, and I just pitched a little different. Yeah, man, great experience to, see the cities, play in the stadiums we grew up watching, have some Hall of Fame teammates, but also a lot of lessons learned, in terms of the adversity and trusting your talent and kind of doing what got you there. I think I got away from it a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. And let's talk about, because we have a few minutes left, and I want to definitely touch on the book
Yeah.
and really dive into that a little bit. So
Sure.
what gave you the inspiration for that, and what's it really give our listeners what the book is really focused on?
Yeah. Well, spoiler alert, I'm going to give you the title first. It's
Okay.
called From the Bullpen to the State Pen. So kind of gives you a little idea of how things went.
Yeah.
Man, as I said in 04 there, I let that foothold back in my life, that alcohol, that, what I call it is a God-shaped hole where we're trying to fill it with everything. And for me, that was performance and alcohol and promiscuity and trying to be a tough guy and, all the things that were so temporary and never satiate you. And then I would kind of go from that big league career to a double A kind of still like a player coach role with the Texas Rangers. Think Bull Durham, like the guy who had been up there a little bit. And now I'm down with the young prospects. That was so fun, man. I was with the Rangers. They were grooming me to be a coach. Had guys like Derek Holland, Wes Andrews, Chris Davis. They were, 18, 19-year-olds. I'm the 30-year-old mentoring them. It was a great role, man. I loved it. But also I'm still battling real hard. So my career ended with a really poor choice off the field. It was a Friday. We were celebrating. We were in the middle of a championship run, day off the next day. And all those youngsters were always telling me, Puff, come out with us, man. We heard you used to be kind of wild and a fun guy. And I had told them all season long, I said, and I'm back with my family. I'm trying to make the right decisions again. I can't do it, guys. But I was also living a little bit of a double standard and going out on my own and kind of faking like I had it going on with them because I was their mentor. I was their chapel leader. I was all these things. And I didn't want to let them down, man. So that's what I talked about earlier. That's where I was like, pretend like you got it all going on. These guys look up to you, right? And so on that Friday that I mentioned, I was driving into the ballpark. It's my 15th year of baseball. I'm a routine guy, no different than any other day of my whole career, man. Probably picked up the same sandwich, probably showed up the same time, did the same routine. And those guys, I was driving in, and I kind of felt like, man, I'm going to go out tonight. I'm going to go out with these guys tonight. And this is important because I talk about this still small voice that told me, don't do it, man. That's a bad idea. Don't do it. And I stuffed that down and said, it's one night. Come on, I'll be home next week. And the next thing I heard, and this is why I alluded to what I did earlier about asking for help, is I actually felt like the voice going, you should go and ask these coaches and managers for help. You're going down a real dark path. And the first instinct was, man, that's selfish. You're the old guy. You're the veteran. We're in a championship. I'm not doing that to my boys. That's selfish. I'll deal with this when I get home. Well, I didn't have that opportunity because I ended up that next day, I woke up in jail because of the decision I had made that night, going out and drinking. We can get as far into it or not as you all want. I'm obviously an open book, literally. And that would lead to serious consequences. I went to a jury trial about 9 months later. I showed up at the field the next day after I got bailed out. So I'm going a little fast. And I pitched in that game that night, didn't tell a soul. Guys, for me, it was like, I'll just stuff this, get home next week, and it'll all go away, right? We'll sweep it under the rug. It wasn't the case, man. Everything that happens in the dark is illuminated in the light. And some media picked it up, became a very public story, very embarrassing. I had to walk through that, let my family down and all the people that loved me. But ultimately, I would go to a trial, get a 5-year prison sentence, serve 3.5 on it. And that first day when they gave me my sentence, I had guys like Nolan Ryan come in as a character witness, just embarrassing, but also like the baseball world really surrounded me and it was humbling. And they put me in cuffs. They said, we're going to take you away. I said, can I say bye to my dad? And they said, nope, you're ours now. And I went into a holding cell and they stripped me of all my belongings and they closed the bars. And guys, I went from doing the ages on my kids in 5 years. I had three kids at this time, and just the pain of that and what that's going to look like to God, I just surrendered absolutely everything to you. This is where I got myself. I don't know where else to go. You're all I have. I've always heard you're all I need, but here I am. And man, he walked me through that whole, prison. It's awful. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. You see things you don't want to see. The worst part is not being able to touch and text and call your family anytime you want. Very lonely. It's never quiet, but you're very lonely. But man, that was what changed my life completely. And the redemption story after that is super fun to talk about. That's in the book as well. And walked out, I guess probably about 14 years ago with an onion sack. Sometimes I have it, an onion sack with a Bible and some hygiene, and started my life completely over. Just humbly took one step in front of the other and watched God restore my family, restore baseball, the program I'm able to be a part of now, and just so much more. So it's been a really cool journey. But yeah, man, I went from the bullpen in the big leagues to the state pen, quite literally, and God had me right where he needed me to be.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And, hey,
Amen.
and you know what, Brandon, too? I definitely, we're running out of time, but I definitely want to have you back because I want to talk a little bit more about the book, but then I'd like to talk about, your program too,
Sure.
the program you're involved in.
Yeah.
So I'm going to have, we'll have Sherry reach back out because I think it's a fascinating, story. And I love the path that we're going on with this. And I think it's really important for young players and their families to listen to this and really hear it.
Episode 2.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Part
It only
2
took us
coming
3
up
tries
soon.
on this one.
Part two.
There you
Part
go.
two.
Well, Brandon, thanks a lot, and we're definitely going to have you back on soon. So, guys, we'll get to the part 2 of this like the cliffhanger here for All-Star Insights, but we really appreciate Brandon you popping on with us today. Great
Thank you,
episode.
Brandon.
Yeah,
Awesome,
great
guys.
time.
What
We
an honor. I
appreciate.
look forward to coming back on and trying to encourage as many people as we can. I appreciate you guys having me.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. Thanks
Absolutely.
everybody for listening today to All-Star Insights, sponsored by Kids on First Foundation and Tuckahoe Sports. We'll see you next time.
Have a good one, guys. Thank you.